Hello and welcome. This is Professor Spark, and in this video I'm going to provide you with a demonstration of certain topics in Chapter 6. I do want to remind you that in these videos I cover what I feel is the most important accounting applications, which are things that either students struggle with or that build in future chapters. Now in this chapter, most of the material is not going to build in future chapters, but it is a little bit of a confusing chapter at first. The good news is that you'll get a break from debits and credits. The not so good news is that you are going to end up with a little bit more math in this chapter than in any other chapter. So there's 4 learning objectives. Learning objective 4 is in the appendix. So chapter 1 we'll briefly talk about, but we'll really stick in learning objective 2, which is computing cost of inventory, and 4, which is computing cost of inventory in a perpetual method. All right, before we get into that, I'm going to briefly talk about learning objective number 1, which is the types of inventory. So in Accounting 101, we are going to focus only on merchandising inventory. So this is inventory that we buy and resell, as opposed to a manufacturing company that actually builds their parts. So in a manufacturing company, you will actually see multiple types of inventory on the balance sheet. And these are typically raw materials, work in process, which is work that's started but not yet complete, and finished goods. If you think about maybe cookies that you're baking, raw materials would be your sugar and your flour. Work in process would be what you've put in the bowl and started mixing, but you don't have a finished product yet. And finished goods would be the finished cookies, all packaged up and ready to go. All right, so again, we're not going to focus on this in this class, but it's nice to know when you guys are looking at balance sheets that when you see these types of accounts, that's what it's about. Our focus, though, is going to be in merchandising companies. And remember that inventory is an asset, and it's a current asset because we're hoping to sell it within the next year. The other thing that I want to point out is there is a term on your invoicing called FOB shipping point or FOB destination. And this determines where the goods are sold. So again, assuming that we're using a third-party freight company, such as a UPS or even the United States Post Office or Yellow Freight Company, so the seller puts the goods on the truck, or UPS would take those goods. Who owns these goods while they are in transit on this third-party carrier? Does the seller or does the buyer own those? Well, it depends on whether or not it's FOB shipping point or FOB destination. If the terms are FOB shipping point, that means that the sale occurs right when they're dropped into the third-party truck. So ownership cuts off from the seller, and they now become the buyer's goods. If it's FOB destination, on the other hand, the seller would put the goods into the third-party truck, and while they are in transit, the seller would own them. In fact, the seller owns them until they arrive at the destination. When they arrive to the destination, the sale takes place. So the seller owns them in transit. Something that may help you is if you draw a little picture, and I mean, again, stick figure picture is fine, but here's your seller, here's your buyer, and here's your truck. If it's FOB shipping point, draw the line right at the shipping dock. That's when the sale takes place. If it's FOB destination, draw the line at the destination. That's where the sale takes place. Okay, and remember, freight costs that are paid for by the seller, such as Amazon, we talked about that in Chapter 5, those are an operating expense. It's almost like a marketing expense, a selling expense to encourage buyers to buy from you and not somebody else. All right, so the focus of this chapter is going to be about how to cost your inventory. And specifically, when you buy inventory, because again, we're not manufacturing inventory, but we are buying it. And on any given day, we may pay a little bit more or a little bit less than we paid the day before. So then it basically becomes how much did the inventory cost you? Okay, and if you think about something as simple as gallons of milk, right? You go into the store and you've got gallons of milk. If somebody takes 1 gallon of milk out of the refrigerator and goes to buy it, and the seller has multiple costs in their system, which one did we sell? Well, there's essentially 4 different choices that we can use to cost our inventory. The first one is specific identification. And specific identification is really limited. Car dealerships can use specific identification and other kind of more custom shops. And basically what this says is every item is marked unique. So every item has a serial number or a VIN number, some number to identify that particular product. This example is DVD players. And honestly, when you go into Best Buy, they're probably not tracking their DVD players by VIN number. Or not VIN number, but serial number. What they are tracking is the make and model. But let's say that they were tracking each DVD player by the serial number. Well, if we have this electronics company, Premium Electronics Company has 3 DVD players left in stock. All are identical and all are priced to sell at $85. One of the 3 DVD players left in stock with serial 1012 was purchased on June 1 at a cost of $52. Another, serial number 1045, was purchased on November 1st for $48. And the last player, 1056, was purchased on November 30th for $40. So what this is saying, a lot of numbers going on here, but we've got 3 different serial numbers. All of them cost Premium Electronics a different cost. Now, Premium Electronics is going to sell all 3 DVD players for $85 each. But the cost in the system is different for each one. So if we are using specific identification, every time a DVD player is sold, we know exactly which one was sold, so we know exactly which cost to take out of our system. So if we know the DVDs with serial number 1012 and 1056 were sold, well, then we know exactly what to reduce our inventory by. So cost of goods sold, we would reduce our inventory by 1012, which was purchased on June 1 at a cost of $52. So there's our $52. And 1056, which was purchased on November 30th for $40. So we know that the 2 items that were sold cost a total of $92. So that's how we could use specific identification to identify how much were the items that we sold. Okay, again, that's real common with a car dealership or a jewelry shop, somebody that's going to really track their items. But companies like Best Buy and Walmart and Target, they are not individually marking milks and even clothing, right? If you've got 10 t-shirts, those t-shirts all have 1 barcode on them, and we don't really care which one sold. But if you're using specific identification, you can identify exactly which item sold, so therefore it's easy to figure out what was cost of goods sold. Now, if we wanted to know what was left in ending inventory, we would be able to identify that too. So which one of these items was not sold? 1012 was sold, and 1056 was sold. 1045 was not sold. So my ending inventory consists of 1 DVD player, serial number 1045, for a total of $48. All right, since that has limited application, we're going to focus on 3 different types of methods. One is called FIFO, first in, first out. One is called LIFO, last in, first out. And one is probably what maybe you thought about doing to begin with, which is an average of the costs. All right, so using the method FIFO, first in, first out, what this says is, hey, if you've got multiple costs in your system, we don't really care which item actually sells. Picture those gallons of milk in the refrigerator. We don't care which one sells. Of course, with milk, we might try to push the older stock out to the front. But FIFO is just a systematic process of recording our costs. So under FIFO, what we basically do is we say, hey, the oldest inventory, the first items in, are the first items we're going to record as being sold out. So in this case, we have inventory. We start in May of inventory of 30 units that cost us $9. Middle May, we purchased 25 more, and oh, look at that, our price goes up. It's now $10. And on the 24th, we purchased 38 more with yet another slight increase of $11. That means we've got 93 total units in our costing system for a total value of $938. So if 74 units of these are sold, we can figure out what is our cost of goods sold. Now, another thing that I want to point out is that we're using periodic inventory system. We will get to a perpetual inventory system at the end of the video, but at the beginning here, we're just focused on periodic. And remember that periodic means that we periodically record our reduction in inventory. Not with every sale, that's perpetual, but on our periodic method, we record every sale when it comes, but we reduce our inventory only periodically. So now we're at the end of May and we're going to reduce our inventory. So the question becomes, which 74 units were sold? We are not using specific identification, so therefore we don't know exactly which items were sold. But under FIFO, we assume that the first items in are the first items out. So these older items are going to be the first to sell. So what I like to do is I like to say, FIFO, your arrow goes down, it falls. Your FIFO arrow falls. And when we sell our units, we'll go ahead and start from the top and work our way down until we get 74 units. So therefore, we're going to sell all 30 of these units at $9 first. Then we'll sell 25 units at $10 and part of these units to make up 74 at $11. Okay, so all 30 units at $9, we're going to go ahead and reduce from inventory. All 25 at $10. And then we only need 19 of the last tier. All right, so we're pulling from the top down to figure out cost of goods sold. So 19 units at 11 gives us 209. Our total 74 units have a total cost of $729. Now that's for cost of goods sold. The thing that makes Chapter 6 most complex is we have multiple factors going on. In this case, we're using a periodic inventory method. We're using FIFO, so our arrow falls. But the question may ask us for cost of goods sold, or it may ask us for how much inventory is in ending inventory. Well, to figure out ending inventory, all we need to say is, all right, how much is left? We know all the units in the top tier sold, all the units in the middle tier sold, so we have basically half these units in the third tier that are left. Okay, so the first two tiers are sold. The third tier, we've got 19 units left at $11 or $209. So our ending inventory is 19 units and for a total of $209. Okay, again, this is just an inventory assumption, and companies will pick one assumption and go with it. It doesn't mean that we're out there on the floor only allowing customers to buy the oldest units. It means we pick a method, kind of like depreciation, and we just move with it. Okay, so you've got to watch each problem to say, okay, this is periodic, it's FIFO, so our arrow falls, and what are they asking for? Cost of goods sold, or are they asking for what's left, ending inventory? All right, so let's move on to the next method, LIFO. Again, we're using periodic, and it's LIFO, and 74 same units sold. Under the LIFO method, we assume that the last units in are the first units sold, or first out. Guess what? Our arrow is going to lift. So LIFO arrows lift. FIFO arrows fall. LIFO arrows lift. All right, so now when we figure out which 74 units are we going to reduce out of inventory? Well, we're going to start at the bottom and sell these first 38 first. So 38 units at 11, Okay, we still need all 25 units at 10. And that brings us to, what is that, 63? So we still need 11 units at 9. So our total units sold, 74 units, for a total of $767. Now that's if the problem's asking for cost of goods sold. If it's asking for ending inventory, again, ask yourself, well, what's left? We sold all of these bottom two tiers. So how many units are in the last or in the top tier? We started with 30, we sold 11, so that means 19 are left at $9 for a total of $171. Now one quick note here. We have 93 total units and $938 total dollars in inventory. We can always check our figures by confirming that our total of cost of goods sold plus ending inventory, if we add up these two numbers, we should always equal 93 total units. So 74 plus 19 is 93, and $767 plus 171 should equal 938. Okay, so that's a nice check figure. Or if you're confident that you have cost of goods sold figured out, you could always just do the backwards math. 938 minus 767 equals $171. All right, so that's FIFO and LIFO. And again, just remember, FIFO, your arrow falls. LIFO, your arrow lifts. And the next method is average cost. So the thing about average cost is you want to remember the formula total dollars over total units. So we're going to do the math for $938 over 93 units. Our average cost is $10.09. So the easy thing about cost is you take cost of goods sold, we sold 74 units, times that average cost of $10.09 equals our total cost of goods sold, $746.66. For what's left, ending inventory, if we had 93 units, less 74 sold, that means we have 19 units left at $10.09 equals $191.71. Now again, I can check my totals. Cost of goods sold plus ending inventory in units equals 93 units. I'm good there. But my dollars are going to be off just a little. I should have $938 and I have $938.37. And you can see I noted there, that's okay. It's rounding. So when you're doing average cost, be aware that there will be a little bit of rounding error. All right, so average cost, total dollars divided by total units, and then just multiply that by units sold or units in ending inventory. So those are the four methods that you can use for periodic: specific identification, FIFO, LIFO, and average cost. Now when we go into the appendix, we're going to use the same methods for perpetual inventory records. Remember, perpetual means that right away after that sale, or I should say along with the sale, we're going to record the reduction in inventory. So this is going to use the same mechanics that we just used for periodic, but a little bit more complex. Now let me tell you, for perpetual specific identification, nothing changes. You'll use exactly the same method we talked about to begin with. But perpetual FIFO and LIFO and average cost are going to require a little bit different mechanics. Stick with me. The mechanics might take you a minute to figure out, but in the end, it should come to you, or you may have to watch the video again and hopefully it'll come to you. All right, so when you see the word perpetual, the first thing I want you to do is take the T in perpetual and remember that you need to compute a table. So not a table like we did for periodic. That was kind of a small little table. In perpetual accounting, we need a large table. So for the FIFO method, we can still draw our arrow down, but we're going to need a table, and we're going to use the date, purchase, sale, and ending inventory. Now under perpetual, the other thing that you can remember with that T is not only do we need a table, but we need to order everything in the date order. So the T in date and the T in perpetual, remember two things. You need a table and you need to order everything by date. So here you can see that there's 4 dates that we either had inventory or purchases, but there's 2 dates that we sold. A sale of 441 units occurred on June 15th for a selling price of $7 and a sale of $47 on June 27th sold for $8 per unit. All right, first of all, these selling prices, you could cross them out. If I were writing on a piece of paper, I'd cross those selling prices out. We don't care about that in this chapter. What we do care about is our cost. So the focus of this entire chapter is how much is our unit cost. All right, so let's go ahead and start plugging in our table. So on June 1, we just have ending inventory, 120 units at $5 each. Okay, on June 12th, that's our next date, we buy some more inventory. $391 at $6 equals $2,346. Now, very important, and most of you will think, oh, I don't want to do this, but trust me, it will help you. You're going to rewrite all your inventory in the last bucket. So you're not going to just assume, okay, I already have this 120 units. You're going to rewrite 120 units from your prior bucket and add in the new purchase, $391 at $6. All right, so that's June 1 and June 12th. The next date is June 15th. It was a sale. Remember, we ignore the selling price, but we want to know that we sold 441 units. Now, the key is I'm going to draw an arrow right here in my last bucket. So I'm going to sell, my goal is to get 441 units here. Starting from my top down, little arrow here, I'm going to sell all 120 units at 5, and then I only need 321 units at 6 to equal 441 units. And that's my sale piece. My ending inventory is what's left. Well, I sold all the units at $5, but of the $391 at 6, I sold 321 units, so I have 70 units at 6 left in ending inventory. Okay, back to my dates. The next date is June 23rd. It's a purchase. So now I have June 23rd, 210 units at $7. Again, rewrite this previous inventory, 70 at 6, and add in 210 at 7. Now, I will tell you a hint to make this a little bit easier. You could leave off all the totals and just work on units and do the calculations at the very end of all the totals. All right, then we have a sale of 47 units on June 27th. So again, FIFO, my arrow goes down. I'm going to only need 47 units at 6, right, which leaves me with 23 units in ending inventory at 6, and then all that next tier, 210 at 7. And my last date is June 30th. It's a purchase. So I put it in my purchase column, 233 units at 8, and now I have 3 tiers in my ending inventory bucket. 23 at 6, that's from above, 210 at 7, that's from above, and now my newest purchase, 233 at 8. If I had another purchase, I could draw my arrow down again and keep going down. Now, in perpetual, the 2 questions are going to be either what's your cost of goods sold or what's your ending inventory. If they ask you for cost of goods sold, it's the whole middle column. 488 units for a total cost of $600 plus $1,926 plus $282 equals $2,808. If they're asking you for ending inventory, all you need to do is add up the last bucket. 23 units plus 210 units plus 233 is 466 units. And if I add up my dollars in this last bucket, I get $3,472. Now this was a lot of math, so you may want to do a check figure here. If I add up my units sold plus just my last bucket of units, I get 954 units. And my dollars, my whole middle column, cost of goods sold, $2,808, plus my last bucket, $3,472. Yep, that all equals my total cost. And where these check figures come from, you would just add up your total cost in inventory. So here's your total units Add those all up, you would get 954. Add up your total cost, you would get 6,280. Now, if we were to do LIFO, it's exactly the same mechanics. So you set up your table, you lift your arrow because it's LIFO, and starting with June 1, I've got my beginning inventory on June 1 becomes my ending inventory on June 1. On June 12th, I've got my purchase, $391 at 6. I'm going to rewrite my previous bucket and add in this new purchase. So 120 at 5, 391 at 6. Now the next one is a sale. So June 15th, we had that large sale, $441. Now I'm going to lift my arrow up. Okay, so here I'm going to sell all 391 units at 6. And I'm going to lift my arrow up to get to 441. I only need 50 units at 5. Okay, so this middle bucket, what I'm trying to do is lift the arrow up and pull 441 units, because that's how many we sold. What's left? I sold all my bottom tier, and I sold 70 of the 120 at 5. I'm sorry, I sold 50 of the 120 at 5, so now I have 70 left at 5. June 23rd, we have another purchase, 210 at 7. So again, I'm going to rewrite my bucket here, 70 at 5, plus my new purchase, 210 at 7. Okay, the next date, the 27th, is a sale, 47 units. I'm going to lift my arrow up. I only need 47 units of the 210 from the bottom. So there's my sale, 47 at 7. My ending inventory is the whole top tier because we didn't use any of that. And 210 at 7, we took 47 of those units out. So that leaves us with 163 units at 7. Okay, and then on June 30th, we make another purchase. 233 units at 8. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite all this top tier, 70 at 5, 163 at 7, and my new purchase, 233 at 8. Now again, that's a lot of writing, but it's worth it, because if you just keep those same mechanics, all you need to do is write your arrows up or down. All right, question may ask you, are you looking for total cost of goods sold? That's the entire middle column. I would add up all my units or all my dollars. Ending inventory is just the last bucket. 466 units, my total dollars, $3,355. I do my check. Does my total units, 488 plus 466, equal 954? Yes, they do. Does my total dollars, 2,925, plus 3,355 equal my check figure, 6,280? Yes, they do. And again, I got those check figures by adding up all my units in beginning inventory plus purchases and my cost, beginning inventory plus purchases. All right, last method that we're going to discuss for perpetual. Remember, perpetual, you need a table and you need date order. Is average cost. Now this one is going to require a little bit more work. Those students seem to like it. So same thing, I'm going to order everything in date order. 6/1, I've just got my inventory. On June 12th, I have $391 at 6. Okay, I'm going to rewrite, okay, same mechanics as before, 120 at 5 and 391 at 6. Now remember from periodic, when we use the average cost, we take total dollars over total units. So anytime you have more than one tier in ending inventory, you do that computation. Total dollars divided by total units. So $2,946 divided by 511 units equals 5.765. And the question told me to round to 3 decimal places. So that's where I'm doing my rounding. Then when I have my sale on June 15th of 441 units, I just multiply by 5.765 to get my total cost of goods sold. What's in ending inventory? Well, I had 511 units in ending inventory, less my 441 sale. I have 70 units left at 5.765. This ending inventory bucket, you can keep that average cost going. All right, on June 23rd, we have another purchase, 210 at 7. So I'm going to rewrite my last bucket, same mechanics, and add in my new purchase, 210 at $7. I'm going to take my total dollars divided by total units. Why do I do that? Because I've got two tiers here. So anytime you've got two tiers, you need to do your average cost. So $1,873.55 divided by 280 units equals 6.691. So on June 27th, I can take 47 units sold times that average cost of 6.691, which equals $314.477. What do I have left? I had 280 units less 47 that were sold. That gives me 233 units at 6.691. I can keep that average cost. All right. Last transaction is a purchase, 233 units at $8. I rewrite my old inventory and add in this new tier. Now, if I were going to keep going, I'd get an average cost here. But I knew I was at the end of my problem, and I just need to add up cost of goods sold, the middle column, 488 units, for a total of 2,856.842, and my last bucket, 466 units at $3,423.003. And again, if you add these two up, oops, that LIFO arrow should not be there. If you add these two up, you'll come really darn close to 6,280, but a little bit off because of rounding. All right, so again, I want to remind you that if you have periodic, you just lump all your purchases together, right? And you figure out how much was sold. But in perpetual, remember the T in perpetual means that you need to put everything in date order and you need the table. If it's FIFO, your arrow falls. If it's LIFO, your arrow lifts. If it's average cost, you just figure out total dollars over total units. So this is an important chapter, but it's not the most important chapter. I do want to remind you that this is the end of Unit 2. And a lot of times students feel like these problems take so long that they spend a lot of time working out or trying to work through these problems. You will see quite a few problems. You'll have to compute either periodic or perpetual. You need to figure out if it's FIFO, LIFO, or average cost. And you need to figure out if you're computing cost of goods sold or ending inventory. So when you're on the exam, I want you guys to pay attention to each piece of that. Periodic or perpetual, FIFO, LIFO, or average cost, and are they looking for cost of goods sold or ending inventory? You will see quite a few problems, probably 6 to 8 problems, that you're asked to compute these types of questions. However, don't forget to work on chapters 4 and 5. Sometimes students spend so much time making sure that they get chapter 6 right that they really don't emphasize chapters 4 and 5 enough. So remember, chapter 4 was your adjusting entries and closing entries. Chapter 5 was your purchases and sales. And chapter 6 is your unit cost. All right, please let me know if you have any questions. Go ahead and post those to discussion board or send me an email. Otherwise, have a great day. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing I wanted to demonstrate, and it wasn't on the handout, so I forgot. Lower of cost or market is the last concept in this chapter. It's a really easy concept, so I just wanted to walk you through it so that you don't spend too much time in the textbook looking at it. But lower of cost or market basically says, hey, here's the cost on your balance sheet. If you've got flat screen TVs, you've got 100 of those, and each one costs $600. And you've got radios, 500 of those, and each of them cost $90. If you went to rebuy those, so market is not the selling price, but hey, I'm going to go back out to the market and rebuy all this inventory. This is the per unit cost. Okay, Lower of cost or market is a test done on your inventory, and typically it's done on like older inventory or inventory that has fluctuation, quite a bit of fluctuation. You would compare your cost on your balance sheet to what you could replace it at, the replacement value. And if the replacement value went down, GAAP rules say you're going to mark your inventory down. So what you do is you just go through each of your inventory items and you pick the lower. So is it the lower of cost or the lower of market? So you multiply your units times the lower of the two to get a total cost. You would go through each of these, and that's why you see the red highlights here. So TVs, the replacement market cost. 500 radios, our cost was lower. So 500 times 90 is 45,000. Blu-ray players, 850 units, the replacement is lower. So times $48. And CDs, 3,000 times our cost was lower. So you multiply all of that up to figure out what should your inventory cost be. And if it's lower than you paid, then you mark that down. So essentially that's what lower of cost of market does, and it is truly applied. It's one of those few instances where GAAP says, yeah, you can mark something down. You don't have to use actual cost. However, you can never mark anything up. So let me try this again one more time. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email or post a discussion board. Otherwise, have a great day.